Adaptações de jogos para o cinema têm sido um desafio para diretores e roteiristas que se arriscam nesse tipo de projeto. E grande parte dessa dificuldade vem do contraste entre a experiência interativa dos games e a narrativa linear exigida pelo cinema.
O que ela quer dizer, mãe?
Nos jogos, os jogadores exploram livremente aquele universo, tomando decisões que influenciam o rumo da história. Já no cinema, a trama precisa seguir uma estrutura mais tradicional, contada a partir da visão dos realizadores. E com tudo isso em mente, o diretor Christoph Gans decidiu levar para os cinemas um dos jogos de terror mais icônicos da Konami, apresentando ao público a sua visão de Silent Hill.
Pode me dizer como faço para chegar até Silent Hill? Por que você quer ir lá?
O filme traz a história de Rose, que leva sua filha adotiva Sharon até a misteriosa Silent Hill, cidade que a garota costuma mencionar em seus pesadelos. Mas elas acabam sofrendo um acidente de carro e Sharon desaparece sem deixar pistas. Em sua busca desesperada pela filha, Rose precisa enfrentar uma seita local, enquanto desvenda a conexão da garotinha com o passado obscuro da cidade. Quando um jogo é adaptado para o cinema, é essencial preservar a essência que tornou a obra tão popular entre os fãs. E isso significa trazer para o filme as principais características que tornaram o jogo famoso.
My first experience of Silent Hill was 5 years ago, and I play on PlayStation 1, Silent Hill 1. And I remember I was something like 3 or 4 hours into the game when I realized that I was playing a game which was completely unique, absolutely frightening, and basically one of the few games that actually could become a movie.
So then it was an adventure because, we had to go convince the Japanese people that produced the game, Konami, to give us the right to make the movie.
They were anxious about the level of faith that a director will bring to an eventual adaptation, because that game has such a cult following.
Whenever I approach anything to adapt, you have to be willing to completely disassemble it and to create something new. The one element that you must remain true to is the spirit of the material. If you're not true to the spirit of the material, then you've completely lost. In fact, we would sit around with the game during the writing of the movie. We would, more than anything, study how the camera moved as it travels through the game.
When you have to invite the audience to follow you into a crazy, crazy, crazy world, it's good that you make it through a very simple motive, like the love of a woman for a kid.
Hey, Sharon! Sharon!
Christoph has reworked the idea in making it a woman searching for her daughter.
The main theme of the film is motherhood. Who's a good mother? Who's a bad mother?
Mas isso pode ser uma tarefa árdua, pois o enredo dos jogos precisa funcionar também na linguagem cinematográfica. E muitas vezes, algumas mudanças são necessárias para atrair um público que não está familiarizado com o jogo.
Heresia!
The lead character of Silent Hill 1 is a man named Harry Mason.
And he worked very well in the game, but when we started writing, respecting his personality, we found that it's a woman. I don't think that it's important if the main character is wearing a dress or pants. What is important is that we'll preserve the atmosphere of the game, which is the most important thing.
So we decide that Harry Mason will become Rose. Sometimes the fan can be shocked to hear that, because they know so well Silent Hill through the game. But I'm myself a gamer, I'm a true follower of the Silent Hill mythology, and a game is a game, and a film is a film.
Estou procurando minha filha, eu temo que tenha sido ferida. Todos perdemos nossos filhos.
Além do clima sombrio, Silent Hill possui um enredo que aborda a dramaticidade de seus personagens. E para protagonizar essa história, a produção decidiu escalar um elenco que, embora fosse muito experiente, não fosse tão conhecido do grande público, a fim de que o foco se mantivesse na trama e nos personagens, e não nos atores por trás deles.
When I did the casting, I very deliberately went toward actors from independent film because they bring with them something different, a different quality. For example, there is a character named Dahlia. If we want to transpose her on the paper, we understand that she has not enough depth for an actor or for an actress. We decide to make her much more gray than black. And that's what we try to do with the different character of Silent Hill.
I've never played a part like Cassandra Dahlia before. Dahlia's been a much more complicated character than I anticipated her being.
We needed to have a Sybil who was strong, authoritative, but empathetic, and Laurie Holden's perfect for all that. She has all of those qualities.
She's an action gal, but she's got a heart. You know, she's a real person.
Jamie! Jamie, a bruxa!
When I first read the script, I thought, what is this? Is this what sort of science fiction / horror? I didn't even know it was based on a game. I've never played a computer game. I don't have a child. My nieces and nephews live thousands of miles away. And then I had to read it again, and I started to see the resonances.
Nós só queremos satisfação.
Satisfação?
Vingança.
Many times I said the main character of this movie, one of the main characters of the movie is a little girl of 10 who's going to play 4 parts, including something really evil. I say, you know, Jodelle, you're going to play 3 different characters in this film, and one of them is the devil.
He just said perfect, so I'm here. Eu tenho muitos nomes.
I think Jodelle Ferland is my new favorite actress. She's amazing to work with because she has the concentration of an adult, and you'll see her playing multiple characters in the film, and she does so with incredible ease.
It's kind of like making 3 movies at once, except for because I play 3 different people. But it's not too hard to keep them separate.
And I don't know how this delightful little gem who likes pink can so easily grasp terrifying moments and then cut and crack a silly little girl joke.
Sua fé traz a morte!
E uma protagonista capaz de carregar o drama da história e, ao mesmo tempo, demonstrar força nos momentos mais aterrorizantes do filme.
Por que não conta a verdade a eles?
I was looking for somebody who, for me, was sophisticated and somebody very vulnerable. And I think that Rhoda Mitchell has both quality.
Christoph is focused on female characters. There's something unique about seeing sci-fi or this sci-fi genre with just females leading the story in a way.
Acha, garota! Não! Espera!
Embora seja considerada uma obra de terror, há várias cenas com elementos de ação presentes no filme. E para trazer mais realidade para as telas, as atrizes participaram efetivamente de muitas delas.
For a movie that is basically set out on the surface to be non-action, there are a lot of action elements incorporated throughout the entire filming of the project. They want every bit of their performance to be as realistic as possible.
I've gotten together with him, and he's really helped choreograph these fight sequences. Sybil just kind of takes me over sometimes. You know, I just get caught up in the physicality of it all.
Não deixem as bruxas descerem! Vamos!
If you review the scene, you'll see that Sybil is not wearing any protective gear on her arms, and the miners are wearing these huge costumes with 1.5-inch thick metal underneath them. So every time I was hitting them, I was scraping up my arm, pretty much my right arm mostly, but both of them. And they were bruised and cut up and scabbed, but at the end of the day, it was so fun and exciting, and I look at all my war wounds as my badges of honor.
When Laurie and Rhoda are in the small utility room, and Red Pyramid has basically cornered them in there, we actually shot from the front face on. so we could see both Laurie and Rada's faces throughout the entire sequence.
I thought that I would just be primarily using my imagination. I never anticipated that there would be this huge blade that really was up against my neck. I was that far away from the blade.
2, 3.
I needed to get my head out of the way at the precise moment, or there could have been a problem.
For me, the scene in the boiler room was very much about playing limbo, because this big sword would come in and over the top of us, and I'd have to like bend back, try not to get my head cut off.
I think most actors love wire work because it gives them the ability to do a lot of acts that they would never be able to do without the assistance of the wires.
There is one scene, and I think it was one of my favorite days, where I come across a pit and I see Alessa for the first time. And in order to get to her, I have to jump over all these metal beams.
Rada's background didn't encompass any kind of wire work, so we started working with her, putting her in a harness. We shot almost all the footage of her going across the beams, with it really being Rada Mitchell doing the jumps from beam to beam to beam all the way across.
I actually did have to jump and sort of keep my balance. So there's a certain amount of terror on my face you'll see in those scenes, and a lot of that was real. And of course, if I was going to fall, I'd be caught on the cable. But for me, it was quite exciting because I'd never done it before.
Queimaremos essa bruxa e expulsaremos o mal.
Sybil sacrifices her life. This character wakes up to a fire at her feet and dies by fire. How do you prepare for a scene like that? It was absolutely terrifying. It was boiling hot. I was on a 35-foot ladder with a metal harness that was digging into my skin, and they lowered me over a fire. There were real spikes coming out of the ground, metal and wood, with the fire, and all I thought was, as I was being lowered, one slip up and I'm impaled. So the terror and the fear and the heat was all very real.
A ambientação é provavelmente o aspecto mais importante em Silent Hill, que alterna de uma simples cidade comum para um lugar coberto por uma densa névoa, e que gradativamente se torna um pesadelo de ferrugem e sangue. E para reproduzir com fidelidade o clima dos jogos, a produção teve um imenso trabalho para construir todos esses cenários.
Silent Hill is a town that has been abandoned for 30 years. The paint is peeling, the walls are crumbling. A set sometimes, other than having one look, had 3 or 4 looks.
We have 4 different Silent Hill. So we have a Silent Hill as it exists now today. We have Silent Hill like it was 30 years ago. We have Silent Hill in the fog, and we have a Silent Hill when the darkness arrives and when all the nightmares and the creatures appear.
We were dealing with 106 different sets and locations in the film.
Some of the businesses had closed out. They were going through some renovations, so a lot of sections of the whole street had closed down because they were going to renovate it. We were able to go in and redress, and basically to make it look like the town had been abandoned for 30 years. In the darkness, everything is rusted, everything's decaying even further. It's just a world of rust and blood.
I like very much the set where we have the darknesses playing around because it's a hospital, but everything is decayed.
Isso santuário!
We looked for an old factory that was a big, large space with a lot of texture that we could put this meeting hall in the middle, that they had this sort of secret meeting place. After they finished shooting the meeting hall scenes, we came back in, ripped it apart, tore the hole through the floor, and spent a long time burning wood out in the back of the studio and brought it in and basically created an aftermath of the fire. It's sort of a real church in the typical traditional layout of a church, but it doesn't have the altar area. Instead it has the painting of the burning witch. And then it has the sunken pit for the meeting areas. We spent about 8 weeks building the church.
Temos que queimar essa menina!
The ladders were based on a design that we found. It was an old German etching of a witch
Outro ponto essencial da história são as bizarras criaturas que surgem na cidade para aterrorizar os personagens. E para alcançar com realismo as texturas e aparências repugnantes, a produção fez todos os figurinos de forma prática.
I think a lot of horror movies work on the idea that less is more. And if you don't see the monster, it's scarier. Whereas Christoph's really brave. He shows you the monsters and features them and you see them, and they're not gory, kind of ridiculous characters. There's an elegance to them as well.
Fica aí. Atira nele!
My favorite monsters ever have been in this movie. They're bizarre and creepy, and they look like they've come out of some sadomasochist handbook.
The textures, whether they were slimy or dry or wet or crumbly or whatever. The game was like the Bible.
My personal favorite one is the armless character. Visually, I think that's my favorite monster.
The armless character was just a two-piece costume that Patrick had designed. It was a pair of skin-tight silicone legs that were airbrushed in mottled skin tones and like a plastic foam and rib cage. Over the top of that was stretched a big silicone condom that was about 4 feet long, which strapped onto the actor Michael. Patrick had designed it so Michael could wear the costume. There would be a manifold built into the chest and a little kind of a vent and a hose that would be plugged into a big pressurized container full of black methocel, which is essentially food thickening agent mixed with water and black pigment. And on cue, we were able to spray this out of Michael's chest.
3, 2, 1, spray! Good.
Grey Child was essentially a foam latex and silicone bodysuit, which Patrick had created, which completely covered Yvonne's body. Little feet appliances, which blended the suit down into her ankles, and hands and a head, which would be glued down over her body every day. That process, about 2.5 hours.
Patrick's team knew that I had this constant urgency to go to the bathroom. They specifically created a flap, so I have easy access to the bathroom all the time.
Excuse me, I have to go to the ladies.
Sabe o que pode acontecer com garotinhas que são deixadas sozinhas?
A maioria das criaturas foram reproduzidas do primeiro e do segundo jogo, mas a figura do zelador foi criada especialmente para o filme.
Roberto, the movement coordinator on the show, played the role of the janitor who is twisted into this tortuous shape, covered in crap and dirt, crawling across the floor with cockroaches coming out of his bum. So what we did was we took a cast of Roberto and we created 2 elements, which was a full-size artificial body of Roberto, and that was dressed into a set with barbed wire, so the actress would come in and pull something out of his mouth. The other element was Roberto in full prosthetic makeup with a fake pair of legs strapped to his back, bent up over and tied to his head with artificial barbed wire. The tattered costume he was wearing was dressed over the seam and give him a pair of optical green pants, which we call these Kermit pants. But essentially you could shoot it from the side and from the front and from behind, and it would give the impression that Roberto had been bent double. Roberto was able to take another part in the movie, which was the role of the Red Pyramid.
My next favorite monster is Red Pyramid. He was actually a really kind of intimidating image, and the way that he moved was really very simple but very balletic.
What I was trying to do as much as I could was to reproduce exactly the movement from the video game. My prosthetics, the upper body is glued to my skin, so the skin doesn't breathe, but it's so soft that it's like second skin.
It was about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 part prosthetic, which was blended into his skin. And we also, apart from painting his chest, his arms, and his neck, we also had to paint his bum cheeks and his legs, because I didn't give him the option of having underwear. That process took about 2.5 to 3 hours every time Roberto played. Also, Wendy Partridge had created a leg extension, so he was just shy of 7 feet tall in the complete costume.
The boots have two metal things on the outside wrapped with a band that closes with Velcro to hold my ankles really strong, so it's nice and steady.
And not only is he 7 foot tall in the costume, to accomplish this effect, most of the time, it was just camera angles. But when he had direct interaction, i.e. grabbing somebody by the bloody neck, we created a miniature dummy for that effect.
And plus you're carrying this big heavy sword, which is not in reality, so it's all faked by the movement. I have to make the sword look like it's incredibly heavy, and so it adds to the movement. And I can only see the floor, so I can't see in front of me. It does affect the balance.
E as icônicas e mortais enfermeiras do jogo receberam uma atenção especial.
There was a lot of excitement on set when the nurses came to set because they were en masse, and because there were so many women that looked exactly the same with no faces, it looked kind of like a pack of animals.
What I tried to do with the nurses was to be as close as I could be with the movement in the video game.
I created the costumes and the hats of the nurses. Essentially, we took a generic body form and sculpted distressed, rotting, putrefying skin in a very thin layer over that surface. We brought in 20 girls, so I created 20 latex nurse costumes, which did up with zip ties and Velcro, because they had to be extremely tight on the girls' bodies.
We were shooting really, really fast, so some of the stuff we didn't get to rehearse, and on this particular day I had a fight scene with a nurse who had no face, so she couldn't see very well, and she ended up punching me in the jaw. They were my favorite ones just because it was such a strong and bizarre, crazy image. And the people in effects promised me that they're gonna make me one of those latex nurse outfits. I haven't received it yet, so I'm still waiting for that.
Dispondo de orçamento de $50 milhões, Silent Hill arrecadou pouco mais de $100 milhões mundialmente. O filme não foi muito bem avaliado pela crítica, mas agradou ao público, fazendo com que o longa fosse considerado uma das melhores adaptações de um jogo para filme. E seu bom rendimento nas bilheterias tornou viável uma continuação em 2012 e um terceiro filme que vem sendo produzido baseado no segundo jogo e que terá novamente a direção de Christoph Gans. Se você gosta deste tipo de conteúdo, não esqueça de deixar seu like, se inscrever no canal e ativar as notificações. Nos vemos no próximo vídeo. Até mais!